my name is Eunah Cho, and you were just watching a performance by a group of young musicians from the University of Southern California. And they're in Davis for just a few days, so we're fortunate enough to have them drop by our studio and give us a little performance. So just stay tuned, and we're going to be hosting them in the studio in just a few moments. So this is in the studio, and we have our special guest musicians here with us today. So let's just go down the line and have them introduce themselves for us.
I'm Kenneth. I'm from Maryland originally, and I just finished my undergraduate at University of Southern California.
With which instrument?
With violin.
Violin.
I played viola for the performance that you just heard, but yeah, I'm usually a violinist.
Hi, my name is Jiyoung. I study music at USC and I play the violin.
Hi, I'm Tomomi. I just graduated with my Bachelor of Music from University of Southern California also. I play the piano.
I'm Eunghee. I will be a senior next year at the University of Southern California, and I just played cello.
So you're the baby of the group, I guess, right? The only one who's still left as an undergrad. Yeah, well, that's exciting. So my first question, I guess, for you guys is, how did you get involved with classical music? Or specifically, how did you end up playing the instrument that you're playing now? So Kenneth, you play violin and viola, but I guess your primary love, I guess, would be the violin, not so much the viola. I think that's the case for a lot of violinists who also have to play viola. Don't tell violists that.
But contrary to what I think most people would think, I actually really wanted to play the cello. Because I have an older brother who played the cello, and I guess watching him learn and practice, I really wanted to kind of follow in his footsteps, but I think my parents thought I was a little too small, so they wanted me to play a small cello, so violin.
But I mean, you were a little kid then. I mean, everyone's small when they're that age.
I think I was abnormally small. Oh. So I think that was their solution. I kind of stuck with it.
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess that works. So it wasn't necessarily that you were drawn to it and you were like, I want to play violin. It was more given to you and it happened to work out?
Well, I started on piano when I was 5, and then I hated it a lot, which is strange because I like it a lot now. And I regret that I hadn't kept piano. But when I was 8, I really wanted to switch to either the cello or, I guess, violin.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it was a relatively smooth transition, I guess, to a good instrument for you. Now, what about Jiyoung?
I actually started with piano also because my mom was a pianist. So I learned from my mom, but I also hated the piano.
You could also be learning from your own parent, because I actually had to start learning piano from my mom, and it was like, this is not working.
Yeah, it was hard.
You know, when you're little too, it's like you don't want to sit there and listen to your mother tell you like to play piano when it's like they already tell you to do other things. You need other teachers, I guess, from the outside. So then how did you end up with violin?
So in my first grade, in my elementary school, they had just opened the violin class, like a group lesson with 30 other people. So I just decided to join.
Oh, so was it a music school for elementary school kids, or it just happened to be a music class?
Just a music class.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And it's a public school, like they
it was
had
just
that program. Oh, neat.
Yeah.
And what about Tomomi?
I swear I don't remember, or I'm pretty sure my parents are making up the story, but I was watching a Disney show, and apparently I said I wanted to play the piano and dance in a ballet company, which I swear I didn't say.
Wait, a Disney show, like on the Disney
like
Channel?
Disney Channel kind of TV. Yeah. And I guess I said something along the lines of, oh, I want to play that instrument. And then so when I was 3, my mom...
3 years old?
Yeah, 3. She took me to piano lessons and ballet classes, but I was always crying going to piano lessons, so I don't know how I wanted to play this instrument.
Maybe you regretted it as soon as you went to the first lesson, but maybe you did.
But eventually I was like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Yeah. Was there like a turning point where you were like, you didn't like it and then all of a sudden it...
I think at one point my teacher, or I think I kept saying I wanted to play some like music that I really liked, and my teacher always were like, oh, this is too hard for you. But when I started saying those things, and she was like, oh, that could be doable. Like when I was in first grade, I was like, oh, I want to play for Elise. And she was like, eh. But like 6 months later, I said that again for like, oh, I want to play that for a recital. And she's like, okay, well, we can play that. And then I started enjoying wanting to learn pieces.
Yeah. And do you think you had like a knack for it when you started? Was it?
No. I think my sister actually also started, and she was a lot faster to learn than I was, but she got bored of practicing.
Oh, okay. So. Yeah. So you enjoyed playing piano though when you started, as opposed to them who hated it.
I mean, I don't know, because I was crying going to piano lessons. I don't know why I was crying. So.
Maybe there's like a threshold in piano where you have to like cross it and then start to like it, but if you don't cross it, then right? Okay, Eunghee. What about you?
Well, it's actually very similar to Kenneth's story. But I also started on piano when I was 6. And I kept it going through up until high school. But with cello, my sister, as you know, she played violin before I had picked up either instrument. And I would always hear her practicing. And I had this tendency to want to be a copycat. For strange reasons.
I think it's a little sibling thing.
That could be it. But I saw her practicing all the time, and I thought I really want to play music in general. But it so happened that our mom bought a cello at a garage sale before this, like a few years before.
How much was it?
And at this point, I'm actually not sure. I can't imagine it'd be very expensive. But it was a very small cello, and she decided at that point maybe I should try the cello because I showed some interest in.
So it was already, your fate was decided for you, right?
A little bit.
As soon as you fit the size of the cello, then that's when they give it to you.
I think they knew piano wasn't my thing because it was, and both instruments are very difficult for me, but piano was especially a hassle.
But you wouldn't say that you disliked it or had like a loathing for it when you started, at least.
No, it was just a lot harder to find myself practicing piano, which I didn't dislike the instrument, but.
But do you think you had a connection with the cello, like once you started learning it, as opposed to maybe piano, you just learn it because it's a technical thing that everyone starts their kid on piano, and then you move on to a different instrument. But maybe with the cello, you're like, oh, I actually am more engaged with this.
I think so, yeah. So maybe subconsciously, I never really thought about the two instruments as one being like a superior instrument than the other.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, another question that I have, now that we've all heard how your origin stories, yeah, as you might say, but you're a bunch of young people and you're playing classical music. I'm assuming you plan on pursuing it as a career in the long term, right? You're not just in it for the heck of it, because you're going to college. You have to work hard while you're there. It's not all just sitting around and having fun, right? It's working really, really hard. But how did you end up in classical music as opposed to, I'm assuming you listen to classical music too, right? And you love classical music. Whereas there are a lot of young people, a lot of my peers, and I'm assuming a lot of your peers too, there's this stigma on classical music where they think that it's boring, it's only for old people, it's only for rich people, and it's rigid, unemotional, and I think we can all agree that it isn't really any of those things. There are aspects of it which are negative, and I think there is some truth to stereotypes, but at the same time, you guys are living proof that it isn't those things as well. And there are young people who are in touch with other things in the world, but they also have this huge part of their life, which is classical music. So do any of you guys have an opinion? Like, what about classical music makes you want to actually stay in it for the long run?
Well, as a general genre, it seems history has kind of shown us that when you hear of these genre crazes, like the ragtime craze or like the pop craze, the popular music craze, and also I guess the heavy metal craze, these seem to be somewhat short-lived. Not saying that they're lesser genres, but the general, I guess, popularity of these,
like the lifespan of
tends to have a beginning and an end point. But with classical music, all these different segments of classical music, from the Renaissance time to the Baroque, Romantic, going on through modern, contemporary style of music, classical music, seems to have been quite sustained throughout.
But now, in the news, you're seeing that symphonies are folding because there's no funding, and people are basically fighting for any kind of job that they could possibly get, especially orchestra, because that's maybe one of the most secure jobs for a musician, as opposed to just gigging around and hoping that people hire you for random little events. But now orchestras are folding, and I mean, Sacramento Philharmonic just barely started up again. They're hanging on by a thread, and they're hopefully getting back on track, but their entire last season was canceled because they didn't have the money to keep going. And doesn't that almost seem like classical music is on the decline, and maybe it's hailing the end of classical music as an era instead of having this long lifespan, as you might have put it? But do you guys have any sense of hope that, I think we'll be able to rejuvenate it, revive it? Like, are you guys optimistic about it?
I am rather optimistic about it. I think that while there is definitely a decline, I guess, of interest and of funding within our country, within America, it's actually still very much ongoing and very strong in almost every other country around us that has a very developed sense of classical music.
So you'd say not in America maybe, but in Europe and Asia there might be more engagement with classical music still?
Yeah, I know from traveling, most parts of Europe and most parts of Asia are very heavily invested in classical music. And if anything, I feel like it's growing stronger. There's new generations of other countries. I feel like parents are getting their kids started earlier and earlier. And there's a lot more competition. And
so maybe like the old symphonies, or at least orchestras where there are a lot of older generations in them, and if they're not filling them up with newer generations and they're just stagnating a little bit, then it's more likely to decline. But at least in a university, young people are constantly filing in and going out, right? So maybe that's where there's hope of rejuvenating classical music, or maybe that's where it should happen, and eventually it'll hopefully translate into the rest of the world. I mean, for me, every time people would tell me that, classical music is boring and only rich people can afford to even go to classical music performances, and I'm like, no, what are you talking about? Like, there are free performances everywhere. You guys give free performances all the time. Tomomi has come to Davis several times, and she and Eunghee, because she's this fabulous sight reader at piano and just playing piano in general, but they give free performances at Atria. Like, it's, there are free performances everywhere. But then when you want to go to like a large professional orchestra concert, and I looked up tickets for myself. I'm not a student. I don't get any kind of a discount. It's just general admission. And I saw a ticket, and it was $180 for one ticket. And I was like, how am I going to afford it? How is like a regular person going to afford that on a regular basis? Someone who wants to see live music. Whereas there are bands, like local bands in Davis, because we have a strong local music community, if not classical, but at least, popular rock or anything like that. And I get free tickets thrown at me all the time, or a ticket is $12. And it's totally within my budget to go to a show like that. But I want to go to the classical music. And how do you think maybe there should be some kind of a change in the infrastructure? Or what is your opinion? Do you think the prices of the tickets have to stay that high? Because there's a lot of money and effort and years put into a musician's training.
Well, the people seem to generalize musicians, or classical musicians especially, as this highly trained, aristocratic group of people. And the work that tends to go into being a successful classical musician, in general, it tends to be quite a few years of training, actually several, like a lifetime of training and hours of dedication every day. And it seems to, the prices that reflect on these operas that tend to maybe go to $200 per person, they seem to only attract this wealthy group of, this older generation of people that can afford the concerts. And it could be a bad thing for the health of classical music.
Yeah.
But in the same strain, these prices do reflect the amount of work that go into the production of an opera. If you go to the Metropolitan Opera concert there, then it'll take years of preparation to give one performance.
Right, it's a big show. It's a lot of money and time invested into putting on a giant production like that. But at the same time, if only a certain group of people can afford it, like regardless of how much it costs to put on a show like that, it seems almost like it's just shooting yourself in the foot. Like eventually, the audience that can afford to go to these concerts and these shows, they're not going to be around anymore, and all these young people are like, I want to go, but I can't. And
I mean, Taylor Swift concerts cost $200 to go, and you're so far away in like a stadium that has really
that's a
terrible
really good point, though.
acoustics.
Yeah,
I think it's the matter of how we're gonna expose them, the audience, into classical music, because I think the quality of classical music, it can't be worse than like any pop singers or bands out there. And I think it's as like young classical music, like students who are pursuing classical music, it's our job to expose them in like a pre-performance, and then they'll realize that it's just as worth as going to any other concerts that are like super popular, famous in like Staples Center, or things like that.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point. And I mean, I know that you guys do give those kinds of performances, and they are really engaging. But a lot of the ones that you guys do put on, there aren't a lot of young people in the audience there still, and it's almost like you should go and see these really talented young people play music. It's free. I mean, for now it's free. I mean, when you have actual careers where it's like you're at least big enough names that you can charge more money for performances or charge at all, then they'll have missed their chance. But I think it's a really cool thing what you guys do when you go out and play music for the community, because I think that's awesome. And another thing I wanted to mention is that I know that at least Tomomi, you can play jazz piano too, right?
Kind of.
I mean, you say kind of, but we all know you can play jazz piano. And, classical musicians aren't limited to just playing classical music. I mean, most really good classical musicians, they can improvise. It's something that I can't improvise, but I know my brother can improvise. I'm assuming you guys are good at improvising, and you're multi-purpose musicians. I mean, if they needed someone in a recording studio for a soundtrack or for a band who needs some kind of strings, like you guys can just jump in and just be like, tell me what to play, and you can do it, right? Or the pieces in this key, you guys can play it, right? Because you're trained and you're talented enough to be able to do that. But some people don't realize it until they actually have to come face to face with, a classical musician isn't just sitting there and playing a sonata. Like, they can do other things that, that might be more what I want to listen to or what another person wants to listen to. And I think that's really cool. I mean, are you and Jiyoung, Kenneth and Jiyoung, are you also involved in popular music as opposed to, or are you mostly in the classical music area?
I think we're both trying to branch out in different styles of music and different aspects of music, like score arranging and
so arranging it yourselves? Like, not,
yeah.
Okay.
When we get calls for work, sometimes instead of actually playing our instruments, they're asking for us to arrange music for a particular ensemble or instrumentation, or I've actually even gotten a call to conduct something before.
Do you have any background in conducting, or?
I can't say I'm good at it because I'm probably rather bad at it.
Right.
But
you get the gist, you understand
but
music.
I've taken a few courses with some professors at USC, and I feel like it was very important. It's an elective course, but I felt like it was very important for the future because you never know what you'll end up doing, 5-10 years from now. And,
right.
If you have this skill, then it's something that you can definitely put to use when it's offered.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really good that you keep your options open, because you can't just be like, I'm going to be a soloist and then hope that pans out, right? It's not realistic. You know a few big names, but then everyone else who's like, I wanted to be a soloist, you don't really know who they are unless you stumble upon a concert. And then it's not that they're not good enough. It's just that there can only be so many big names before you just run out of, like, people are not going to be able to remember them, right? So it's just, you have to be flexible, and you know, you're developing all of these skill sets. I know Eunghee, he took a conducting class, and I saw the video, and I mean, it was pretty good. I was really surprised when I saw it, you know, because I can't imagine him conducting just as, you know, when I see a classical musician, it's not like they must all be born conductors. Like, sometimes people look really awkward when they're conducting and you don't have a knack for it, but you know, some people, if they take a class just to see, you know, it's a skill that I want to explore, and some people might just end up becoming a conductor one day because they find out that, you know, it's totally the right thing for them.
Well, people see popular culture as kind of describe the classical musician as like the nerdy type who can't really deal with social situations, especially in movies. And it's kind of, I guess us as the younger generation, we're kind of trying to like slap down that stereotype.
Yeah.
And because I don't know.
You guys are in touch with the world, and you know what's going on, and
we try for the most part. Different skill sets that we're trying to attain, especially like conducting, that requires a lot of actually maintaining the integrity of the music, and also having a control over this large body of musicians. So you have to be very good at dealing with people and understanding attitudes.
Yeah. Okay, so I will have to cut you off there because we're running out of time. I mean, I wish we could have a lot more time. I mean, it went by so quickly. So I'm really, really glad that you guys came on for In the Studio. We're really lucky that we nabbed you during the week that you're here in Davis, and I'm really, really grateful. And this is my first experience hosting any kind of a show, so you guys were very good to me. So thank you so much for playing music for us and for talking with us today. And you're watching In the Studio, so you can find this show and other shows on dctv.davismedia.org. So until next time, bye.